Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, Columbine High School, 1999. The trail they left was a massive archive of written journals and self-produced VHS video diaries, collectively called the Basement Tapes. What they reveal is not a unified mind, but a deadly, dual blueprint. Two distinct psychological pathologies feeding into a single genocidal mission. Harris's text, the tone of a commander, was pure psychopathic grandiosity. He wrote of the attack not as an act of rage, but of conquest. His primary motivation was disdain for the human race, which he called vermin. In his journal, he equated dominance with purity and planned the attack as a grand finale, detailing logistical instructions, bomb construction, and tactical failures with clinical precision. He was the architect. Klebold's diary, in contrast, was a spiral of suicidal nihilism. He wrote about profound self-loathing, romantic despair, and a longing for non-existence. His violence was the means to his own end. He found purpose only in Harris's destructive energy. This dual dynamic, Harris the controlling narcissist and Klebold the collapsing dependent partner, was the power source for the entire attack. Their writings framed the event as spectacle. The attack itself mirrored the script. On April 20th, 1999, they arrived armed with propane bombs, designed as the main source of destruction, a plan ripped directly from their journals. When the bombs failed, they shifted to their secondary plan, a methodical shooting spree that took the lives of 12 students and 1 teacher. During the siege, Klebold could be heard shouting in anguish, blurring the line between his stated rage and his deep-seated desire to die. The final moments were themselves a chilling adherence to their script. They retreated to the library, where the last pages of their journals had described their final moments. Columbine became the prototype. Subsequent mass attackers studied, quoted, and sometimes plagiarized phrases from Harris's journal, converting his psychopathic rant into a manifesto of vengeance. The writings were not a confession for the police. They were a self-memorializing guide for the murderers who would follow. Or the chaos. The 2-phase attack, failing to detonate the planned explosives and then engaging in a systematic shooting, resulted in the deaths of 13 people and injuries to 24 others. The chaos ended when both Harris and Klebold retreated to the library and committed suicide. Seong Hui Cho, Virginia Tech, 2007. 8 years after Columbine, the Manifesto evolved from paper to broadcast. Unlike Harris and Klebold, who left materials for investigators, Cho engineered a massive distribution package, mailing a series of videos, photos, and a massive written statement directly to a national news channel between 2 phases of his attack. This package, which he viewed as his testament, was performance art for the media. The videos depicted Cho seated before a camera, armed and dressed in dark clothing, addressing the nation. His rambling speech was a bizarre, monotone sermon built entirely around a persecution complex. His language of persecution was overwhelming, the sense of having been mocked, deprived, and cornered by what he called rich brats and deceitful charlatans. He appointed himself the martyr, transforming personal humiliation into divine, violent duty. The content revealed that Cho sought compensation for a perceived cosmic imbalance. His targets were not specific individuals, but archetypes, statuses, classes, gender symbols, because he believed society as a whole had conspired to erase his existence. The timing of his mailing was forensic genius. The package was timed to arrive at the newsroom while victims were still being evacuated, guaranteeing his rationale would be broadcast worldwide before his identity was fully confirmed. This made the Virginia Tech case the first digital age attack to use mainstream media as an extension of the weapon. The violence at Virginia Tech was segmented. Cho began, alone, by fatally shooting 2 students in a dorm. He then spent 2 hours mailing his manifesto package before returning to campus. His second phase targeted the engineering building, where he systematically barricaded exits and engaged in a calculated room-by-room execution that left 30 people dead. The methodical, almost ritualized nature of the shooting was the horrifying proof of the moral theater he had constructed in his tapes. Cho's tragedy demonstrated that when an individual's alienation finds a camera, grievance gains an automatic global echo. The manifesto was no longer a diary. It was a carefully engineered distribution system. The chaos Returning to campus after mailing his manifesto, Cho carried out a calculated and methodical execution of students and faculty in the engineering building. This attack resulted in the deaths of 32 people, making it the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. Cho ended the siege by committing suicide before police could breach the barricade. Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook Elementary, 2012. The documents left by Adam Lanza were the most forensic and detached ever recovered. There were no emotional pleas or sermons. Instead, investigators found complex digital archives, hundreds of spreadsheets, essays on mortality, and a terrifyingly detailed comparison of past mass shootings. His work was less a confession and more a research paper. Lanza organized his material with the dispassionate rigor of a statistician. He cataloged the age, motive, and kill counts of past offenders, seeking numerical study to explain, and perhaps normalize, violence. He was engaged in obsessive cognitive rehearsal, simulating atrocity through classification. While others built mythologies to justify aggression, Lanza built databases to normalize detachment. His tone was relentlessly dry. Words that might have expressed anger or pain were replaced by cold syntax and technical prose. He wrote as if death were inventory, not a consequence. This extreme absence of affect defined his pathology. He sought comprehension through absolute control. Violence was the ultimate equation he sought to solve. Within Lanza's files was a chilling document known as the Big List of Things Adam Hates. But even this was written with systemic, almost scientific organization, demonstrating his fixation on patterns and models. The attack at Sandy Hook functioned as the culmination of this research. It was meticulous, timed, and detached. Lanza began in his home, using a rifle to execute his mother. He then drove to Sandy Hook Elementary, equipped with multiple firearms, and executed a precise, methodical invasion. He confined his violence to 2 isolated classrooms, where he executed 20 first-grade children and 6 adults with devastating speed. Forensic behavioral analysis concluded that Lanza's obsessive documentation removed the possibility of inhibition. He did not perceive his victims as individuals. They were data points completing a horrifying model. Lanza's legacy forced threat analysts to recognize that meticulous record-keeping of violence can signal intent long before overt verbal threats emerge. The absence of rhetoric was his manifesto's most terrifying message. The chaos. Lanza's planning culminated in the systematic murder of his mother before he proceeded to the elementary school. His attack there resulted in 26 deaths, including 20 children and 6 staff members. Lanza took his own life as police arrived on the scene, completing his self-designed research project. Kip Kinkel, Thurston High School, 1998. The case of Kip Kinkel predates Columbine by a year and provides the clearest window into rapid mental collapse. His trail was left in private, handwritten journals documenting a terrifying descent that began with depression and ended in homicidal impulse. The journals tracked his rapid mental deterioration, featuring detailed passages of paranoia, self-loathing, and chilling moments of literal internal dialogue, with voices commanding violence. His writing was a continuous, frantic record of a mind losing control, a terrifying conflict between wanting to stop the impulses and feeling compelled to obey them. The text often read like a plea for help disguised as planning. His words became a literal, documented collapse. He wrote, "I have to do this. I have no other choice. If I told you, you would tell someone and they would lock me up." This chilling phrase documented the final barrier breaking down just before the violence. The journals proved prophetic. Kinkel's violence began not at the school, but at home. On May 20th, 1998, he used a stolen pistol to murder his father in the family's kitchen. Later that day, he waited for his mother to return and executed her as well, placing their bodies in the bathroom. The journals reveal this was a strategic move to prevent them from stopping his final act. The next day, Kinkel drove to Thurston High School, armed with 3 firearms and a hunting knife. He fatally shot 2 students in the cafeteria before being tackled and subdued by fellow students while attempting to reload. The attack itself was a desperate, chaotic overflow of the internal chaos he had recorded in his notebooks for months. Kinkel's case remains foundational for forensic psychologists. His journals provide a clear, linear roadmap from internal turmoil and impulse loss to the eventual, violent, external act. His writings showed that sometimes The violence begins with the destruction of the family unit, and the school is simply the final target of a full, documented collapse. The chaos. Kinkel's violence spanned 2 days, beginning with the murder of his own mother and father. The following day, his attack at Thurston High School resulted in 2 external deaths and 25 injuries. He was apprehended at the scene after being tackled by several students and was later sentenced to 111 years in prison. Elliot Rodger, Isla Vista, 2014. Elliot Rodger left behind one of the most obsessive, detailed, and longest documents in modern history. A 137-page autobiographical document titled My Twisted World. It traced his entire life, written with the tone of someone documenting a destiny of vengeance. Rodger's text is the definitive blueprint for the incel, involuntary celibate ideology. The core motive articulated throughout the memoir is staggering entitlement. He viewed social exclusion, particularly his perceived rejection by women, as a cosmic injustice where society was corrupt. In his writing, he treated envy not as an emotion, but as moral reasoning. He claimed that society owed him recognition and intimacy, and that violence became the logical, justified restoration of balance. He blended theatrical grievance with scripted lament, promising retribution, his word for the punishment the world deserved for denying him his wishes. Beyond the text, his infamous YouTube videos reinforced the delusion. Sitting in his car, he spoke directly to the camera with a disturbingly rehearsed rhythm. He wasn't seeking relief. He was auditioning for his legacy, believing the media would memorialize his suffering and validate his superiority. The resulting violence was a scripted production. On May 23, 2014, Rodger began his multi-stage attack by fatally stabbing 3 male students in his apartment. He then proceeded to drive through Isla Vista, engaging in shootings, stabbings, and vehicle ramming, targeted explicitly at sorority houses and university areas, symbols of the sexual and social acceptance he felt denied. His rampage resulted in 6 deaths and 14 injuries before he died by suicide. Rodger's manifesto was not a document for discovery. It was published in real time, built for distribution, and consumed immediately by a vast online following. His legacy produced a dark subculture that romanticized rejection as rebellion, proving that alienation can mutate when social media amplifies grievance loops. The text fused grievance with destiny, a story written entirely to justify murder. The chaos. Rodger carried out a multi-stage attack over several hours, beginning with the murder of 3 roommates before attacking the community. His spree, which included stabbings, shootings, and vehicle ramming, resulted in 6 total deaths and 14 injuries. Rodger ultimately took his own life inside his vehicle. The purpose of decoding them is not voyeurism, it is prevention. Every spreadsheet, every post, and every page is documented proof that despair can disguise itself as logic. Recognizing that specific disguise remains the most urgent form of defense. Subscribe now to ensure you don't miss our next definitive forensic breakdown of the error chain in the darkest recesses of the criminal mind.